Floods and drought are leading to food inflation. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian.heise here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee and let's have a look at this article from Yahoo Finance, originally from Bloomberg, discussing floods and droughts destroying crops and sparking food inflation. Now, Australia is an agricultural nation. We hope to one day be the breadbasket of Southeast Asia, but we produce and export a lot of food. If we jump over to the Observatory of Economic Complexity, you can see some of our exports, and just as they load up, we can see here foodstuffs is a significant portion. Biggest one is wine, actually. Then you've got raw sugar, malt, other edible partitions, animal foods or other edible preparations. Animal foods, chocolate, 2.8%, 200 million. You've got vegetable products as well. Wheat, a $3.23 billion industry. Barley, rapeseed oil, and we have, animal products as well. Frozen bovine, nearly $4 billion. So Australia is an exporter of food. But that doesn't mean other parts of the world aren't facing potential food shortages. So, wild weather is wreaking havoc on crops around the world, sending their prices skyrocketing. Now, if prices in other parts of the world go up, that means that prices in Australia will also go up, even though the food is produced here, because people can sell it for more overseas. It may not materialize as fast as one expects, but it still will have an impact on a cost of food here. What do you think, everyone? Is our food stuff getting more expensive just in your day-to-day? Are we starting to see inflation in food when you go to the shops? I feel like we are. When Rachel does our monthly shop, it really seems like it. So, on wheat farms in the US and Russia, it's a drought that's ruining harvests. The soybean fields in Brazil are bone dry too, touched by little more than the occasional shower. In Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia, the problem is the exact opposite. Torrential downpours are causing flooding in rice fields and stands of oil palm trees. The sudden emergence of these supply strains is a big blow to a global economy that has been struggling to regain its footing after the shock of the COVID-19 lockdowns. As prices soar on everything from sugar to cooking oil, millions of working-class families that had already been forced to scale back food purchases in the pandemic are being thrust deeper into financial distress. What's more, these increases threaten to push up broader inflation indexes in some countries and could make it harder for central banks to keep providing monetary stimulus to shore up growth. And here's the thing. This is going to be the real potential for civil unrest. A few days without food, then you'll start to see people taking to the streets. The Bloomberg Agricultural Spot Index, a gauge of 9 crop prices, has risen 28% since late April to its highest level in more than 4 years. Wheat earlier this week was the most expensive since 2014. The fundamentals have changed dramatically since May, said Don Rose, president of brokerage U.S. Commodities in Iowa. The weather is bubbling to the top, and we have demand chugging in a bull market. The fallout from the pandemic means that the United Nations has already warned of a worst-case scenario in which about a tenth of the world's population would go hungry this year. Things could become more dire if grocery costs keep rising and even more people can't afford to eat. It looks very bleak. So, everyone, this is from the United Nations issuing a warning. This isn't some, fringe group. This is the UN warning that a tenth of the population could go hungry and people won't be able to afford to eat. So, it's looking very bleak, said David Beasley, executive director at the World Food Programme, the hunger-fighting group that won the 2020 Nobel Peace Prize. Declining currencies in food-importing nations, the threat of more economic shutdowns, and struggles for farmers to expand production could compound the problem, he said. You start adding all these things together, and you begin to almost run around like the sky is falling, but it ain't Chicken Little, Beasley said. Mangled supply chains and a flood of buying already sent food prices higher in many countries this year as the pandemic lockdown disrupted global trade. But even then, there was an ample cushion of grain stockpiles, and northern hemisphere harvests were expected to be bountiful. Then came the dry weather. Climate scientists have long warned that an increase in unpredictable and extreme weather patterns would be a growing threat to crop production and food security. Now, I mean, here's the thing. Ever since Malthus, we've had these warnings about, food security, food becoming an issue. I honestly think at the moment, the biggest issue is logistics. The biggest issue is logistics and countries dumping food stuff on other countries and destroying local production. You can see it in some African nations. In the UK, they'll take chicken, there'll be more demand for breasts, the rest gets dumped on other countries, and that destroys the local farmers. It has an impact like that. Now we are experiencing what it means to live in a climate-disrupted world as wildfires blaze across the US West, hurricanes, seasonal growth grow more ferocious, and forecasters say 2020 could be the world's hottest year on record. Antonio Carlos Sminot, a fourth-generation orange grower in Brazil, is seeing the change firsthand. With drought and heat plaguing his land in São Paulo state, the world's top region for orange juice production, the river that usually snakes across his property has vanished. That's the first time that's happened since his family acquired the farm 36 years ago. Well, it's only 4 decades. So these things happen, guys. Oranges on his 500-acre grove are drying up inside and becoming crystallized as the trees suck all the water from the fruits to try to survive the parched conditions. After making some sales earlier this season, I don't have any more fruits to sell, he said, who expects to see his harvest drop about 50% this year because of the weather, what remains on the trees dried without water inside. So here's the thing. And then you see other news reports or articles where in Australia they're dumping truckloads of fruit, vegetables, because they don't look pretty enough for the shops. Logistics, guys, it's ludicrous. It's ludicrous. Humanity wastes so much food. We waste so much food. Shopping spree. It's not just the weather sparking higher crop prices. Agricultural commodity buyers from Cairo to Istanbul have been on a shopping spree as nations try to protect themselves from more disruptions to supply chains, like those seen earlier this year when lockdowns left food stranded at ports, sparked trucking delays, and created log jams at warehouses. A weaker real is boosting prices even further in agricultural superpower Brazil, where soybeans are up 81% and corn 56% this year. Also rising costs for chicken and pork production. As an emergency measure, local government has temporarily removed import tariffs for soybeans, corn, rice, and wheat to control food inflation. Jordan has built up record wheat reserves, while Egypt, the world's top buyer of the grain, took the unusual step of tapping international markets during its local harvest and has boosted purchases by more than 50% since April. Taiwan said it will increase strategic food stockpiles, and China has been buying to feed its growing hog herd. The last protracted run-up in food prices back in 2011 helped contribute to uprisings in the Arab Spring. That said, prices have a long way to climb before they reach those levels. Also, a bumper crop in Australia may help fill the supply gap. That growth in demand helps to explain why prices are moving higher despite a still hefty inventory cushion. Global reserves of wheat, for example, are forecast to reach a record this year. Those supplies could eventually help to bring food inflation back in check if concerns about weather problems start to die down. That would be welcome relief for people like Don Kam Chi, a Ho Chi Minh City working mum. She estimates she spends about 30% more on food bills this year for her 5-member family. She's seen pork prices decrease this month, but things like rice, cereals, and fruits are still up from last year. I just can't trim food expenses as my kids are in their growing years, she said. Meanwhile, at a market in the city, 50-year-old produce seller Li Tai Gang was just an hour away from closing on a recent morning, but her store was still full of unsold spinach, pineapples, pumpkins, green beans, and carrots. Ongoing torrential rains and flooding in key growing areas mean that prices for fruit and vegetables are fetching as much as double what they were pre-pandemic. At these much higher costs, many people can't afford to buy what they need for a healthy diet, she says. I have to call and invite people into my stall something I've never done before, she said, who has been selling at the market for 2 decades. The recovery in prices after years in the doldrums has been welcome news for farmers in the US, who have relied more on government aid to balance the loss of income due to tariffs and trade wars. To see demand be so strong right now for a lot of commodities is a welcome sign. Kevin Ross, an Iowa farmer and chairman of the National Corn Growers Association, who grows corn and soybean in southwest Iowa, said Tuesday in a telephone interview. Right now, experts are just on fire. So there we have it, everyone. There we have it. Droughts, floods are destroying crops, and we're starting to see food inflation around the world. What do you think? Is it something you're concerned with? Do you think as Australians we should be worried? Or would it be time to perhaps invest in some futures? Maybe. Or maybe it's a little too late. As always, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. If you're a fan and want to support the content I create here, there are a few ways you can. You can join us on YouTube or Patreon. You can support us using our affiliate links that you can find for Amazon, Independent Reserve, or Kucoin or eBay down below. You can buy merch from HeiseSays or Teespring, use Gold Pass from the Perth Mint, or support us via PayPal. Take care, everyone. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.